Detroit is Different is where you get information, artistry, history, music, and even comedy. Detroit is Different, a home for the culture of Detroit. Visit online at DetroitisDifferent.com today.
All right, we are back in full effect in the Detroit is Different podcast studios. And it's summertime, and summertime definitely was my favorite time as a child and little homie.
Oh, yeah.
Because this is where things like what Bayan is doing came together. Bayan, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm excited to be here.
Definitely. Yeah. And you have a special program for little homies coming up this summer.
I do.
So what's happening? What is going on with your summer program? As for a kid, it was great to be in a good summer program. And for a parent, it's like, yes, please get them out the crib.
Exactly. I just know for myself, like growing up, I just always remembered those moments of like summer camps and things like that. Or even programs like on the weekends at the mosque. You know, for me, those are where I have so many of my memories. So I just want to be able to, you know, recreate that and keep that going, especially now, you know, with a lot of kids being at home over the summer, or not being in summer school. So, you know, we want to make sure they're staying active, staying engaged, keeping up their skills, social skills too. So I have a summer program I started last year, actually. It's called Writing for Freedom. And basically it's a series of free workshops once a week in the summer. Specifically, this year it'll be in July, every Thursday, from 4 to 7. And it'll take place at Nandi's Knowledge Café. That's in Highland Park. And then the last Friday of July, it'll be from 7 to 9, and that'll be our final showcase. So we'll be able to show the public a project that we've been working on over the summer. But basically, it'll be a series of free workshops, like I said, covering different aspects, such as poetry, writing, reading, yoga, meditation, art, dance. So really just like mixing it up. And I'm working with different community partners that can come in and host these different workshops. So I know, for example, we have a group called Bloom Bodies, and they're a group that focuses on education as well through the arts. So, for example, they'll be hosting a workshop with us July 9th, talking about the importance of teaching Black history in schools. And also we'll be, you know, listing out action steps that students can take to, you know, work towards making changes in their schools, resisting and dismantling systems of oppression. And that's really like the overarching theme of the program as well, is through these different activities. You know, I want us to be really framing what we're doing and thinking about in terms of how can we mold and lead and mentor our youth to be building and to continue this movement that's happening. You know, how can we grow that seed in them and teach them these ways to continue to, you know, resist oppression, dismantle, you know, these different types of oppression, whether it's white supremacy or patriarchy, right? Sexism, homophobia. So these are the types of conversations that we'll be having every week with the young folks. Age group is high school to young adult. So yeah, I'm really excited for it. It's gonna be a good time. We had it last year for the first time and we just had so much fun. So I was like, you know what? We're bringing it back next year. So here we are.
All right. Now with that, we're going to, I introduced that first because that's soon. That's July 2nd. That's coming up.
Yeah, that starts this Thursday. Yep.
So tomorrow, see about getting your little homies over there. And it's a free program right there.
Absolutely free.
In the neighborhood.
Yep.
But I definitely have to start off like the usual Detroit is Different interview and story. Your ties to Detroit. What's your ties to Detroit?
So for me, I've been working in education in the city for maybe about 6-7 years now. After I graduated from U of M, I joined this program called City Year. For those of you who don't know, it's an AmeriCorps program across the country where they put young people like me in schools that need extra support in classrooms, you know, that one-on-one support that students might need. For me, I was specifically at Harper Woods High School, and that was just a huge eye-opener and big experience for me in shifting what I realized I need to be doing in this world. It also opened my eyes to how vast, you know, these disparities can be in education simply based off of your zip code and race. That's something I never knew, especially just I was definitely privileged growing up, going to a really nice suburban school. It was very, very well funded, you know, and not realizing that just a few miles away, it could be a completely different experience in different schools, and seeing how that can also, you know, affect your future outcomes.
As one of the things that I always point out, the government and a lot of politicians, especially Democrats, say with pride, we stop redlining. And redlining was so horrible for what it did. But right now, the definition of redlining is the school districts.
Yep.
Realtors cannot speak to certain neighborhoods or talk down certain neighborhoods, but one of the things they can't speak to is the schools. And the more black students, black or brown students in any school district or school, then that means that the worse grade that school will get, worse grade that school will get, that'll affect property values. So much of what we define as great neighborhoods is defined as quote unquote great schools.
Right.
And great schools, great neighborhoods mean more white people. And that has been a veil of reality that has been lived in for so long. Even the busing issue in 1975 that Joe Biden and Jesse Helms, Strom Thurmond, many of these senators were back and forth over, and what this means of the segregation of the busing. As many students from black neighborhoods said, I want to get access to go to these white schools for a quote unquote better education, which is debatable as well, and what that means. But the disparities that exist in school systems is vast.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't recognize that, you know, the way schools are funded is simply through taxpayer dollars based on your city, right? So that's why we continue to see that huge difference, you know, with areas that are more of a lower socioeconomic status. You know, that's why we're not seeing that much going into the schools that are located there. And people also don't talk about, you know, there was actually a lot of black folks who were actually against desegregation of schools, because a lot of students actually flourished in those schools because they were being taught in a community of people that knew them, that loved them, that trusted them, you know. And actually, some of my graduate studies last year, I saw this data that showed how well they were doing in those schools as well, you know, and how much those scores actually decreased when they started, you know, and desegregating schools.
And that's what makes Detroit such a unique place. Is being here at Detroit is different. I've had the honor of interviewing a lot of people, stringing together many stories. So like Dan Aldridge, and also Kofi Kenyatta, the basis for a lot of African-centered education in America.
And so many of those have closed.
In Detroit. And Detroit Public Schools at one point in time was a mandate on African-centered education at the same time when the $1 billion bond for Detroit Public Schools was taken up from Detroit voters. So money was there for schools, and that's when the state stepped in through Governor Engler at the time, and David Adamany from Wayne State University all said that we can teach these children better, which was a long, elaborate scheme of capitalizing and introducing emergency management inside of Detroit, which eventually took over courthouses, which eventually took over the city, but a basis of suppressing the vote of black people, suppressing the voice of black people, and colonizing resources that black people had allocated to them. This reality played out throughout my lifetime, which I'm one of those people in that mix. Graduated in 2001, and you're an instructor, you're an educator in this mix of dealing with this landscape of these strategically broken school districts, where so many of the resources for what Detroit schools are go outside of Detroit schools. Before we even get there, what led you to want to become an educator? What was the passion that sparked you to be in that field?
So during my time at U of M in undergrad, I was really heavy in the activism scene, specifically around Palestine. So that was just like a huge wake up call for me in terms of seeing what my purpose is and what I can do in this lifetime here on this earth. Being able to bring people, collectively together to call out, injustice in this world. And so after that, like I said, it led me to doing the City Year program, and it gave me, like, my activism really gave me a lot of the frameworks of what I'm using now today. I was a women's studies major, and so I really was able to learn a lot about the theories and frameworks around, not just around feminism or sexism, but also beyond that. It was very heavily tied with racism, homophobia, and such. So, so since then, like I said, I've just been really dedicated, really passionate about what I do. It's really important to me that we use whatever privileges we have to, pass that on to the youth, to do whatever we can to, help build them up. So since then, I've just been teaching English at a few different schools. And I do a lot of youth programming as well, such as this one, poetry as well. I'm a poet. So I do after school poetry programming. I'm just really excited. It's what I'm passionate about. It just brings me joy, to be honest. At the end of the day, it's like, I just love doing it. I have fun with it.
So you spoke to activism around Palestine. Explain that. What activism were you leading or involved in?
Yep.
What was that?
So a lot of colleges do a lot of activism around Palestine. So for people who are listening, don't really know much, definitely urge you to look into it. But since about the 40s or 50s, you had early Zionist settlers coming into what is now Palestine and Israel, and occupying the land. And so we're seeing just a present day form of colonialism, present day land grabbing, Jewish only settlements. You have a huge apartheid wall separating between the West Bank and Israel. You have the Gaza Strip as well, which is another piece of Palestine that has been separated as well strategically. And they really call the Gaza Strip an open air prison because they don't let anything in and out. It's very controlled by Israel. And then even in that West Bank, it's heavily afflicted by checkpoints. People have to carry IDs. They harass them at checkpoints, hold them there for hours. So a lot of scholars and researchers make like these comparisons and parallels between what's happening in Palestine with South African apartheid. Very similar in just terms of how they're separating the indigenous people. And then these colonizers who are coming in and trying to take over the land and trying to basically harass the people to the point where they want them to leave.
And with this, what spoke to you? Have you visited Palestine? What spoke to you about this work? What was your connection to?
Yeah, honestly, it was just humanity. That's really what it was to me. It was just like, even with education, it's like, damn, like what's going on is really fucked up. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on this.
Oh yeah, you can.
And it's just in me. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, dang, like I need to do something. Like I need to keep moving. I need to keep reading. I need to keep active. I need to keep organizing. Like I can't sit and do nothing when there's all this injustice going on. Like why should I have the privilege to sit at home in my safe house and do nothing about it, while everyone else is going through X, Y, and Z? Like, I really feel like God has given me like this purpose to really do something. And I'm really trying to use all the power and energy I have, the resources I have to continue to build other people that are like-minded and that are on the same path and really want to work collectively towards dismantling these forms of oppression.
And that relationship, from the lens of Islam, as it's definitely most Islamic nations and most people of Islam look to the occupation there of Palestine through Israel as oppressive. Did that have a?
You bring up a great point. Yeah, for sure. When it comes to Palestine, it's funny. It's like every Muslim is just down for the cause. It's like it's just kind of born in us. Like it's something that we have been raised as part of the culture for both Muslims and Arabs. It's just something that we've been raised to think about, been raised to be like, this is what's going on, and we support this. Like these are our brothers and sisters, and we got to be there for them. Even growing up as a child, you know, I remember attending protests, going down to DC for a huge rally. So it's been around me since I was a child.
Okay, what neighborhood? Where were you growing up as a child?
So I was specifically born in Hamtramck.
Okay.
Was there for a minute. Ended up moving out to the suburbs in Bloomfield.
Okay.
And then a lot of the mosques that I went to, it was just a normal thing that was just always talked about and discussed. There was always fundraising dinners, things like that. I went to a mosque in Bloomfield Hills called the Unity Center. Also went to one in Dearborn that was predominantly Palestinian. So that was also a time when it, you know, really brought my attention to it as well. As a child, I just remember doing so much there around it.
So even before college, you kind of had an understanding of this. Yep. And did college expand that, or did it more so just encourage you to be more active?
I think it was already there. It was already in me. And then now that I was an independent person, you know, away from home, it was like, okay, like I'm gonna keep doing this. I'm gonna keep the fight going. And like I said, it's just something that's already in me where I always just feel like I gotta do something. Like we need to organize. We need to get going. Like something's happening. Hey y'all, meet me at the Diag. It's going down. You know what I mean? You know, even here, like right now, it's the same concept. Like, yo guys, this is what's going on in this world, especially talking about Black Lives Matter at this moment of time. It's like it took a pandemic for people to be at home to finally wake up and realize, yo, Black people matter and there's shit going on. You know what I'm saying? But I'm also hopeful and I'm glad that people are, you know, finally getting into it and finally realizing and finally educating themselves. And I just hope it, you know, the momentum stays. We'll see what happens. We'll see who sticks around for the fight.
And the reason I have so many questions on this fight, because in so many ways, even that has Detroit ties. As Ralph Bunche, and I don't know, are you familiar with Ralph Bunche's history? But Ralph Bunche was one of the few Black international dignitaries at the time after what was quote unquote considered the Allied forces that on paper they say defeated Nazism and the last stand of fascism and militarism of Adolf Hitler. It was a Black man from the city of Detroit, Ralph Bunche, that served as the dignitary that really drew up the lines for what became Israel and dividing what became Palestine. Ralph Bunche is recognized in history also as the person that went to the Congo with that same theory. And it was his work in the Congo where it made him reflect on what he did in Israel and Palestine and say, damn, what we're doing here to Patrice Lumumba, we did to the people in Palestine. And even in his writings, he said, this will never work out. But his face, that Black face, served as the, I guess, referee on behalf of what the United Nations at the time, coming out of the quote unquote Allied forces, to decide to say that these oppressed Jewish people under Nazism, and people just think it was kind of just Germany, but it was also Hungary, Poland, and many of these other lands need the land of their own. And the land of their own, they said at the time, was the chosen land for God's people, with some of the influence of already a lot of the Jewish people that left that Nazi state of Europe at the time. So this even has some Detroit ties that run deep. And that's why World War II had such an impact on colonialism moving forward in its face now,
Mm-hmm.
and in the way that capitalism has kind of taken form as opposed to imperialism. So I know right now I'm probably boring some people, but I'm trying to just drop some science to get to a deeper question within you and your family.
Mm-hmm.
So how did your dad speak about Palestine and Israel when you were a child?
Mm-hmm.
As you were learning these lessons, what was your family's take? What were your parents' takes?
So like I said, like when it comes to Palestine, that's just something that's just, it's almost like a cultural thing in a lot of Muslim and Arab homes. It's just, it's part of who we are. It's a cause that we all adopt. We're just born knowing, being raised like as young Muslim and Arab kids, like this is what's going on in Palestine, and this is what we're going to fight for. There's no question or debate about it. So that's just how it's just been around me my whole life. Like I said, in all the mosques that I've attended, there's always fundraising dinners going on for it, always protests and rallies. I just remember as a child going to. So it's just like a natural thing for us, in a lot of our households, to be honest. Also, I'm Algerian. And so a lot of people know who are Algerian or Palestinian, there's a huge connection between the two lands and the two people. We just have like this natural love for each other. It's really funny. And I think it's because Algeria has gone through such a severe colonization by France. It's known to be one of the longest colonizations in history. And they went through an extreme battle and extreme wars, just to gain their independence and gain their own lands and freedoms back from France. They call it, what is it called? Million Shahid, which means 1 million martyrs, right? That's how many people died for the cause just to get their independence back from France. So the way it was is like France kind of looked at Algeria as kind of like an extension of their own land. That's literally how they looked at it.
True.
And so, yeah, it's just, that's also something that's kind of like been born into me. That's just in my blood is, I have these people before me, my own ancestors before me who, have fought wars just to gain their own freedom to fight up, and stand up for what's right. And so I feel like that's where a lot of it comes for me. And a lot of people don't know, a lot of women were very heavily involved in the war for independence in Algeria, especially when it came down to being tactical and using disguises, whether with a headscarf or whether it was without. You had women who didn't wear a headscarf and they would disguise as French women sometimes to get between checkpoints. Or you also had women who would wear the full, they call it the haïk covering. And underneath they could be carrying bombs, weapons, or simply just, information that they'd be, trying to pass through checkpoints. Or even suicide bombers sometimes too. So they're like women were very heavily involved in the war for Algeria.
And it's unique that you bring this up. Lord knows it's almost like one of my youngest guests. I'm talking so much about history. Because a lot of those ties, especially when we think of Northern Africa,
yep,
go right back to the Moorish people,
yep,
which we'll label, but Islam.
Yeah.
Islam having its influence,
yeah,
over Europe for generations, of most people not even having an understanding that for centuries that the Moorish people, in even in a lot of what you will see in structures of Catholicism,
right,
algebra, plumbing, any form of current mathematics,
physics,
comes from
astronomy,
the ideas
art
of Islam.
Yep.
African Muslims,
yep,
were the teachers at the time, and many of the adopters in Europe that suppressed their religion after the fact, because the Roman Catholic regime that fought against the Moors viciously,
right,
and destroyed so many of the monuments, so many of the structures, so much of the influence,
yep,
other than the plumbing, the mathematics, like the resources that they could keep. Almost the same thing of what was taken from Kemetic science of the Egyptians. They kept, but it's like, okay, we still need to destroy the imagery of this. It's hand in hand, and that savagery, that the visceral savagery, when we look at places like Libya, Algeria, Tunisia, Morocco,
Egypt. You know, I think what a lot of people don't talk about, actually, this is a very like hot topic right now, is whether people, you know, this debate between violence and nonviolence. But like, I'm gonna keep it real. Like, you can't get what you want by being nice. Like, nothing gets handed to you. You know what I'm saying? Like, this whole debate right now is like, you're gonna go up to your oppressor and be like, hey, can I have my freedom? Can I have my rights? No. Anyone that has gained any form of power, let's talk about this country right here. Like, right? It was gained through violence. It was gained through, you know, genocide. Not saying that it's justified at all, but what I'm trying to say is, anything that you want to gain, you have to do it by force.
I would say, I'll push back on that, and I would say that that's a Western civilization's view of things.
I disagree.
That's his story.
Because on the East side too.
And I would say that Western civilization has so much of an influence on how we look at even his story that we don't even necessarily embrace.
But
other
even
traditions.
Eastern, like,
so I would
it's
say
always
more
through
so
force,
for
though.
like, I would say more so like African traditions. So I can speak more to African traditions than I can speak to Asiatic traditions. So like in African traditions, the Kemetic people with their structures are held up, because that is that was the template for what became Rome, which was the template for Greece, which was the template for Roman Catholics, which was the template for the British Army in America, and so forth and so on. But there were also the Dogon people. There were also the Ashanti people, and many of their communal, collective ways of life were very much so welcoming in different methods and sharing of it. I believe that the lens of violence and savagery is more to a Western perspective, because it is slanted to believe that life is built on scarcity, like capitalism, and there's only a finite amount of resources. But the African perspective is more built on abundance, and there are abundant amount of resources. Even with what I know of the studies of the native people here, the people indigenous to this land, had a more abundant lifestyle of looking at life. So the conflicts between different tribes, as we may label them, was definitely way more of ritualistic dancing and ritualistic call and song than it was murder. Murder becomes an influence, I say, my theory, in Western society, because in Europe it's so cold. You know, it's cold. It's
But what are you supposed to do when you have people coming into your land trying to take over?
But this is
you know what I mean?
This is a construct of Western civilization. Like this was their inaction. The need to come into someone else's space and land was built off of being in places that brutal winters. You know, I mean, the 4 yards could be the difference between my family eating for a week and not eating for a week. So the history of things like Vikings exists. And that's why I think the one Asiatic person that I think is always brought up is the whole concept of Mongolians and what existed with damn, my mind just went blank. Most famous Mongolian, where it's like this person, but it completely shows the way that like the weaponry was not anything that these other nations were looking to develop, because there was no reason to murder people when you live in a land of abundance, when you think that things do exist. But the Genghis Khan, that's who I was thinking.
Oh, okay.
So the Asiatic, this Asiatic general is held up in a high esteem through his story, because Genghis Khan falls on the same liles of Napoleon, of George Washington, of LeMay, of George W. Bush. You know what I'm saying? Like, that is in line with how we like to look at the world. Whereas I would say that there's a collective familial spirit that does exist in a certain amount of people through love that does connect. Even the Moorish people, as they went through Europe, they say, yes, the sword was in one hand, but the book was in the other. But it was really a lot of the book. The knowledge was what welcomed so many people.
Yeah.
And that's why the Roman Catholic army was so
I don't know.
so visceral.
I hear you, and maybe I should do a little more research myself. But I just know just so much of what I've looked into.
What you've seen,
it's always through force.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And that's why I'm saying, like, my personal opinion, the only true way to gain independence and to really win a revolution is sometimes through force. Honestly, because no one's going to listen to you when you're being all nice, marching, holding hands, being paraded by police, you know, surveilling the street for you.
Yeah.
It really completely goes against the whole rhetoric of, you know, abolishing police. But that's a whole nother conversation. But
yeah, but I mean, this is an interesting take. And I mean, I definitely have my perspective.
Right.
And what I'm speaking of is almost like living in like 4 standard deviations away from reality, because how do you live in a reality not influenced by Western civilization at this point in time? And then how much of it do you take to right the wrong? But
I will say, I don't think it's just a Western thing, because I just remember learning as a child about more of like the Eastern civilization, like specifically Islamic era, and a lot of the wars at the time as well. But yeah, we can talk about something else.
So, I mean, but this is all like,
we're just going off topic.
I know we're off topic, but I think we're kind of on topic because this is still your perspective. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And that's kind of how Detroit is different interviews are. But like, I guess in the mix of the topic and still relating it one to one, your calling and connecting in college at U of M.
Yeah.
One of the institutions that is heralded for its role in Western civilization.
Yeah.
What was that like? What was it like being a person that was connected to movements that weren't necessarily in line with the agenda of where capitalism exists right now?
You're talking about my time of activism in college?
Yes.
Like what that was like?
Yeah.
It's very different from outside of college. That is something like I really noticed. Like it's almost like a bubble in a way, almost like a microcosm in itself. But it felt very radical at the time. You know what I mean? I felt like I had really like a group of people who I could connect with and work with, who are very like-minded, who are just so passionate, you know, about organizing, so passionate about coming right in the moment. Like, I'll call you right now, like, yo, it's about to go down, and like people just show up, you know. But maybe because we had that mobility, because we were all so central, so I wonder if that probably has a lot to do with it too. Because something I noticed like right now as an older person, you know, around, you know, whether it's in the city or in the suburbs, I think maybe because we're a little more segregated in terms of distance and maybe transportation too. But I feel like we don't have as much traction as I'm noticing like in other cities, for example, like LA and even in Australia, you know, if you're seeing what's going on there. I feel like Detroit has so much like just small things happening, small protests here and there, but I haven't seen us yet to have like one huge collective movement that we've been seeing like in LA and Chicago, Atlanta, you know what I'm saying? And I think because they have such a big movement that they're able to call for these demands and make some changes happening in there, whether it's their police department, right, their political office. But I feel like here there's just a lot of disconnect. Like I said, I have my theories, whether it might be transportation or lack of communication. I don't know what it is, but I don't know. I feel like it's something that we need to talk about. Like, how come it's not as big as other cities? Like, why not? Why aren't we getting all together? Why aren't we all angry together? making movement together on the streets. I don't know. I don't have the answer to that.
Okay. So, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So in college, you felt that there was more of a a collective that existed around some of the progressive issues.
Mm-hmm.
So what were some of those progressive issues in college that you remember advocating for?
I remember two huge ones going on at the same time, and we really came together. Was one, like I said, around Palestine. Specifically, we had a movement called BDS, Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions. And what that was a practice that was learned from and adopted during the time of calling for an end to South African apartheid, where they really called on the global world to boycott, divest, and sanction, right, South Africa apartheid at the time. And a lot of universities at the time were adopting that practice, calling on their universities to divest any stocks that they had invested that were profiting off the apartheid. And so in the same concept, there's a lot of universities today that are calling for divestment to their university, calling on their board of regents to really look into their stocks that they have and seeing which companies, are profiting off the Israeli occupation. For example, things like Caterpillar, right, which is a construction company, and you have these, what are they called? The bulldozers that are being used to demolish Palestinian homes to make way for these Jewish-only settlements that are actually illegal under international law. So things like that, where we're just calling on our universities to divest from these companies. And so we had a huge movement for that. This was in about 2013, 2014. We had, just thousands of people that were following what we were doing. We had, national media attention. And at the same time, there was also what was called, hashtag BBUM, being Black at the University of Michigan. And this was all happening at the same time, same year. They were also undergoing a huge movement for their community as well. And so it was just really awesome to see all of us coming together collectively, all for the cause of bringing down injustice, racial injustice, ethnic injustice. But like I said, bringing it back to why I think that is I feel like maybe it was because we were all there already. So I don't know if it's like a mobile thing. Being out here now, outside of college, I kind of wonder if that has a big role to play with, and I really feel like it does.
Okay. And then also, from there, your journey in education, connecting the city year starts. How did that start? You said Harper Woods.
Yeah.
Why did you choose City Year? Why didn't you choose the Peace Corps,
right,
or ACLU or another organization?
So when it was my senior year in college, like I said, I was doing my women's studies major, finishing that up. And I was just learning so much about, like I said, the frameworks of racism and sexism and homophobia, classism at the time. So I kind of just wanted to continue along that field of work and that field of study. And then I had heard about City Year through some people, heard some good things. And honestly, I was like, I don't know what else I'm going to do. So let me just try it out and just see what happens. I applied for the Detroit region. And
what led you for Detroit?
I wanted to stay at home, wanted to stay local. And I just felt like there's so much that we could be working on in our own backyard. Like I said, I was doing so much for Palestine in college, which we obviously still need to continue that work. But I also wanted to spend some time doing some work locally as well. And so I felt like when I was at Harper Woods, like I said, it just made me realize, like, okay, this is something that I could be working on here. That's right in our own homes, focusing on educational injustice that's very connected to racism, classism, and seeing how different kids are receiving a different form of education. And that's on purpose. That is on purpose, the way funding is set up. They purposefully want people at the bottom, purposefully want people at the top, and to keep it that way. And yeah, after that, I just continued working with nonprofits, with different educational programs, ended up doing Teach for America. Again, applied to the Detroit region, just wanted to keep it local, wanted to really just like make a change here while I can. And yeah, it just kept building, one year after the next.
So as that continues, I I also definitely have to ask about women's studies. In America, especially, the misunderstanding of two cultures that you're part of, Arab culture and Muslim culture. It's completely been mischaracterized.
Of course.
Through American media.
Of course. And this is long before 9/11. It didn't start at 9/11.
Yes, I know. But I think it ramped up after 9/11. But even before 9/11, one of the things is, Arab men do not, and Muslim men do not respect women. Women have no rights.
Right.
This is something still even right now propagated through, some of the strongest American politicians.
I think that's a similar stereotype for a lot of racial minorities. We have a lot of very similar stereotypes.
True. Very true. So what led you to women's studies, and then also in that in that understanding, what have you found fulfilling to provide arguments against that usual American perspective without an understanding? We're probably never even really interacting with a Muslim that they know,
right?
Or Arab woman or Muslim woman.
So I ended up going into women's studies. So I'm gonna be real. At the time, I was pre-med. I was just going into the whole, let me do something that I know I'm gonna be.
What was the thought in pre-med?
It was honestly, it was a cultural thing, doctor, engineer, lawyer type of thing. These are your options. And it's not like I was forced or nothing, but it was just, that's what I would always see and hear. And this is what's going to make you money, make you comfortable, lifestyle. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do that. By the time I got to my junior year, I was taking biochem, anatomy. I was not doing well. And I'm a good student.
But you just didn't respond well to the studies.
Yeah, it wasn't clicking with me.
What spoke to you about, did you just say as an elective, let me take a women's studies class, or?
So then I ended up, taking a women's studies course my junior year. It was called Gender Violence in a Global Context.
Okay, and you just needed an extra class, and you took it.
It looked interesting, and it fulfilled, a credit. So I took it, and it was an eye opener for me. That class, that's what made it switch for me. It was dang, the readings that we had, we just did so many readings on learning about.
You actually read the work the course gave you.
I think I still have the papers. I kept those readings because it just opened my eyes to
learning discussion board.
These different philosophies and frameworks, but also just showing you what's really going on in this world, particularly how women are being affected during times of war, right? How a lot of women are carrying the brunt during times of war, or in poverty, women are carrying the brunt of it because we're the ones that are still holding the family down, taking care of the children. If men, die in war, or if men are incarcerated, the women are the ones who are holding it down for the family. And so, or just, other forms of violence, whether, they decide to become sex workers, for example. It's a very negative stereotype, but most women who are in that field choose to do it, for different reasons. But yeah, just learning about so many different aspects that we don't normally talk about.
And this was, I'm guessing, just that sparked you to say, I want more classes.
It just, my brain was wow.
Okay, now
it was just whoa.
Okay, now when you went home and told your mom and dad this, what was their response?
Well, so my dad actually passed away when I was young, so just my mom.
Condolences.
Yeah, thank you. So no, my mom was, she's always been supportive, so I appreciate that with whatever I do. Even being 28 and single, and I'm gonna be honest, that's a kind of a taboo, in the Muslim world, to be that age and still be single. And she's still supportive about it. She always says, just live your life, focus on your work, school, all of that, and I appreciate that. So yeah, she's been supportive, throughout this whole time.
Okay.
And me being a teacher as well, especially when I tell people, or she tells people, that I'm a teacher in Detroit, that along comes with many stereotypes about the kids in Detroit. You know what I'm saying? And I feel that's a whole nother work that I have to carry on, is even going against that stereotype. So like you said, I have the stereotypes that I'm fighting as an Arab and Muslim woman, that I'm also having to fight the stereotypes of Detroit kids, specifically black kids. Let's be real.
Well, wait, you stopped the step. Just being a teacher in general.
And then being a teacher.
Just being a teacher, and then being a teacher in a predominantly black city is another layer of that.
Oh yeah, so many layers.
Yes, because people are like, why the hell would you want to be a teacher?
Yeah.
As if the incentive of everything in life is rooted in money.
Exactly. And for me, it was more than that. When I realized when I made that switch, it was like, no, I need that mind fulfillment. That's what I need, because whatever you're passionate about, it'll come to you. The money will eventually come.
Now, as you talk also about another passion, spoken word. Yep. And that's kind of how we met. We met through Dr. Ward, or Stephen, as he would say, at U of M.
At the hip hop class.
Yep. And God knows, I don't know why anybody ever sometimes gives me an open forum to speak on stuff.
No, that was a good session.
But you were like extremely like business. You were like, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. I've been back to his class. Dr. Ward is nothing as professional as you.
That's why he chose me as his, so for people who are listening, Dr. Stephen Ward, he is a professor at University of Michigan. And in the Afro-American department.
He listens.
And I was taking his class. It was an undergraduate class, but I was a graduate student and took it as I forget what it's called, like independent studies.
Yeah.
So he kind of had me as a dedicated assistant pretty much.
Yeah.
And so I just pretty much curated events so that we can keep connected with specifically like the Detroit community and the hip hop community, and bring it out to U of M so that the students there can kind of, learn about it and learn firsthand from people, not just from readings and videos. Yeah. So yeah, that was a really fun time. We had Piper Carter come as a guest too.
Yeah.
Shout out
to
Piper Carter
on Detroit is Different.
We even had my group, Wisdom Poets. Check us out at Wisdom Poets. That was actually our first time as what became Wisdom Poets.
And that was what I was about to ask about your spoken word poetry.
Yep.
You do that as well. Mm-hmm. So what led you into that?
Yeah, it's funny because poetry also started at Harper Woods. I'm telling you, man, that year was transformational for me. When I was at Harper Woods High School, this is like in 2014. I remember the school had a annual poetry show, and I volunteered to help hold rehearsals down for the students during lunch after school. So we would all get together and rehearse together. And it just like really blew my mind and opened my mind to see these young folks being so vulnerable and just talking about their experiences and life stories, and even seeing them get emotional sometimes, or just even like seeing just so much joy too, from being together, over the love of poetry. And I said, dang, like if they're so young, 14, 15, 16 years old doing this, like I can do it too. So it kind of inspired me to write my first formal like spoken word piece.
What was it about?
And I remember writing actually just about like my experience as a Muslim woman in this country. Because at the time I just remember just going through a lot in terms of what was happening in this country against Muslim women. So for people who don't know, there's been during Trump's initial presidential campaign, he just incited so much hate speech that really inspired and motivated a lot of people to act on their racism, right? We saw a lot of that for the Muslim community, for the Hispanic community, and how he was able to use his words to bring people out to act on their racist thoughts. And a lot of it was violent. There were many instances and hate crimes being reported with CARE. CARE is the Council of American Islamic Relations, and they saw a huge surge and spike of cases being reported of hate crimes against Muslims. Also in the news, if you are following, just seeing how many Muslim women were being either verbally attacked or physically attacked, and even some incidences of women being killed as well. There was the case of these group of Muslim students in North Carolina at Chapel Hill who were shot and killed execution style by their white neighbor, who had an incident over a parking spot, but let's be real, it's not what it was about. So it was just different cases. And then like just seeing so many videos being caught of women being, like I said, either verbally attacked or physically beaten, women being stomped on, having their hijabs ripped off of their heads. It was just so much. And it was just like so traumatic at the time. I just remember like just feeling so anxious, and I didn't feel good mentally. Like I was not in a good space because I just kept seeing this over and over again in the media. You know what I mean? Like, for anyone who I know is dealing with this, I know especially as a Black person, I can't understand, but what I can say is that's traumatic to have to constantly see those headlines, constantly see these videos of someone who looks like you, who relates to you, is of the same, group as you, that's being attacked. That's traumatic. You constantly have these images in your head. There was also the case last year of, there was a mosque in New Zealand of 50 Muslims in prayer, and a guy went in there and shot up the mosque, and 50 people were killed. And I just remember that moment being so traumatic for me, where I couldn't get that thought out of my head. Like I just kept constantly just thinking about it over and over. Like I couldn't turn it off, just picturing it, picturing myself in the moment, picturing my family, that happening to us, happening in our mosque. I had to seek like therapy services because it really was, just disturbing my daily thoughts. Like I'd be in class and just be zoned out, not thinking, So like people who are listening, like, seek services if you need it. I know there's a lot of free services right now, which is great. We're seeing so much all the time in the media, Black men being killed all the time. And it's not healthy for our minds to be seeing that. Like it's not okay. We're seeing murder in broad daylight. That's not normal, So, seek help if you need it. Don't feel like you're alone, or, that there's help out there, whether it's therapy or finding groups, poetry, open mics. That has been my therapy, is open mics as well. Reading has been my therapy, writing poetry, working with the youth. Honestly, like this program that I'm doing, like that's going to be like my therapy in that moment, is just being there with them and having a good time and just, healing together, celebrating together. So yeah, it's a lot, man. It's heavy.
So with that being the start and the catalyst of you doing poetry, how did it expand over to you getting on stages and going to open mics?
It was a very gradual process. I will say that. So like even like the first time I performed back like in 2014, totally messed up my first time. Like just forgot my lines and everything, but just kept going with it. Just had a good time. But from there, like it was still really slow. Like I would start to go to open mics, but I never performed, never went on the stage. I was still extremely shy and anxious, very nervous. But just being in that space was like motivating.
So
felt good.
What was the catalyst to make you say, I'm gonna do it?
Honestly, it's just a gradual. It just took slowly over time. It was
over
just
time,
slowly
said,
just being around it more. Practicing every once in a while. Like I might go up there and do a piece.
How did your friends and family respond?
They were cool with it, And
did they say, you doing poetry?
I don't know. It is what it is type of thing. You know what I mean? They expected it. That I've always been like the artist or creative type of my family. So it wasn't like, no
what
big
other creative
thing
things were you doing?
I've always just been like a huge, like, lover of art. Like always love going to museums, things like that. Love books. But what also turned it for me, now that you're asking me and I'm remembering, so the more I got into it, I ended up kind of co-founding and co-joining this poetry group called The Guild. And it was a bunch of us from U of M at the time, but it was after I had graduated. This was like in 2016 maybe. And it was just a diverse group of us that would perform together, do workshops together, and just get together with the love of poetry. And then, like I said, last year is when I got together with a few of the women from that same group. We kind of started like another group, but it was just a women's poetry collective. And so honestly, like through those collectives, it really pushed me into my poetry, into my performance, because we really like critiqued each other, really got to practice more with each other. And then just being around like other dope poets, honestly, is what inspired me more, you know, to do better, to be better, to really push myself. You know, shout out if Guild is listening, or Wisdom. You know, we have Candida the poet, follow her. Michaela Norwood, she's actually the Motown Mike Poet of the Year. She won last year. Mariah Smith. Those are the women from Wisdom specifically.
And at the Motown Mike, I just happened to be, and this is like, if people know,
Oh
it's
yeah,
like,
here's another
I'm
connecting
not,
moment.
The fix was not in. I was not Dwayne Wade at the dunk contest this year that I'm still mad about.
Oh my God.
You just happened to be there.
Yeah.
Diane walked in and I was like, oh.
I got to talk about that story. Can I tell that story real quick?
Yeah.
Okay, so I've never done like a poetry competition, never did slams. That was never my thing. I just like to just go and enjoy poetry and that's it, you know, type of thing. But I saw the Facebook event for Motown Mike and it was like, well, it's free if you compete. So I was like, well, I might as well just go up there because it's free. So why not?
Yeah, I feel you.
You know, and for people who don't know, Motown Mike, they do it every year. And it's like every Friday, I think like in March around that time. Where they have these preliminary rounds every Friday of the month. And then it leads up to like a final competition at the end where it's about 9-10 people that perform at the grand finale. And then one person gets called the Motown Mike, you know, Poet of the Year. And this is by like the Motown Museum. So, and each week it was like about 30 people that would come and compete.
It was a lot. I mean, shout out to Raina Baker. She's one of the most talented people. That has come through these Detroit is Different doors and contracted with me through Creative Differences. It's a collection of them. I can't believe it's like, damn, these people are so talented. I can't keep my talented people.
Right.
But Raina helps run that whole concept and that vision.
Yeah.
And it may be
amazing
even
job.
like it's some performers.
She did amazing.
It's some people are in the competition. Some people just perform.
Yeah.
You know, it's a cool set.
Yeah. So I show up and then I see my friend Michaela Mimi shows up. We both didn't even know that we were going.
I thought y'all rolled in together.
Like I just went because I was like, might as well. I'm gonna spend my Friday night here. You know, just go see what the vibes are like. I'm gonna just go up there, have some fun. And then she was on the same thing, saying like, oh, I just came because I could, you know, compete for free, so I'm gonna just come. And she had a friend in town too, so she just wanted to bring her out. You know, so give her a little Detroit tour. So what better than the Motown Museum? So yeah, we both go there and compete. And ended up both, you know, passing through the prelim rounds. We weren't expecting it. It just kind of happened. And it was just a good time. And then we both ended up making it to the final round with the final 10. And she ended up winning it all. So
that's power.
You know,
that's power.
Shout out to her. She's an amazing poet.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Both very creative. It's good that you've transitioned in that world. And now you're transitioning, giving a platform for little homies. So this is the second year of your summer program.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you're introducing them to artists.
Yep.
What are the ages of the summer program?
So it's open to high school, young adult. It's called Writing for Freedom Teen Camp. So in that age range, just want to bring young people together to start introducing them to one another, have them to start network with each other, have them start building like their own business, have them start building their own, financial and mind as well. And so just give them like a space where they can just be themselves, have fun together, learn from artists in the city who've been doing this, who've been around. We already have a couple of things lined up, so I'm super excited. I can definitely shout them out. Like I said, we have Bloom Bodies. They're a group in the city that focus on education and art. And we're going to be doing a workshop on talking about the importance of Black history in schools, and how young people can mobilize together in schools. We have an artist, young artist. Her name is Bree Gant. She'll be doing an art workshop as well. We might be having Motor City Street Dance Academy, who might be doing a hip hop dance workshop. We have someone coming in to do a yoga and meditation workshop. So, we got a lot of things lined up. We got painting, Like I said, a poetry workshop as well.
You said 4 to 7.
It's going to be the first 4 Thursdays of July will be from 4 to 7 p.m. The last Friday in July will be from 7 to 9. That'll be the final showcase. So it'll be like an open mic style, as well as them kind of showcasing, what they've been working on all summer. It's completely free. Yeah, we're just going to have a fun time. That's really what it's about.
Okay. Well, that's definitely cool. What was the catalyst to make you want to do this, and who funds all of this?
Honestly, like, I do it because I love it. I do it because I have fun. Like, I have fun doing it. I have fun being with the youth. They give me youth. They give me energy. Okay. That's why I love working with them. They keep it real. They keep you real. You know what I'm saying? They check you too. So I appreciate that about them. And in terms of funding, I have a GoFundMe right now. You can look up writing the number 4 freedom. You can also search my name, Bayan Founas, BAYANFOUNAS. There's also a Cash App, $ writing the number 4 freedom. And my Venmo is at Bayan-Founas. We're trying to raise $5,000, and all this money will go towards the program. Whether it's feeding them, T-shirts, the guest artist fees, office supplies, and then any remaining funds will go towards Nandi's Knowledge Café, which is in Highland Park, and she's collecting money right now for renovations and just keeping the business, alive and open for the community.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. So it's independently funded from the ground up.
From the ground. We keep it grassroots style.
I'm with it.
Keep it grassroots here.
I'm with it. So I've given to it. Hopefully you all give to it. Get some little homies in the mix. I'm going to shout out some of the people. It's right here in this neighborhood, basically. Okay. Because... Oakman Boulevard's a couple blocks away. That's kind of in the square, even though it's on the Highland Park side. It's still in the square of my neighborhood. It's where I would ride a bike as a kid. So this is all great. Now I have my classic Detroit is Different questions for you.
Okay.
So the first one, your very first car, year, make, and model, and what year did you get it?
Dang. It wasn't my car, but I was sharing the minivan with my mama at the time. I remember in high school.
She let you grip.
Going to work. Yeah, whipping the minivan. I remember that. And then when I first did start getting my own car, I think it was a white Toyota Camry.
Okay.
I can't remember the year though.
Did you name it?
Nah. It wasn't like that for me.
Where was the first place you went when you got it?
Dang, I don't remember. Probably school.
Okay.
Probably work.
All right. You're the DJ at the Detroit fireworks. Okay. You get to play 3 songs, Woodward and Jefferson. Shoot. What 3 songs you playing?
Wow, that's a hard question. Dang, you really put me on the spot.
Yeah, what 3 songs you playing?
It would have to be for sure a Tupac song.
What song?
I don't know, man.
I mean, he got like a million albums.
I know.
He probably got more albums after he died that was released than when he was living.
And it's a fireworks. I feel like there's like families. Maybe changes.
Okay.
I gotta throw in an Afrobeat song.
Okay. What song?
I don't know. There's so many good ones. Right now, I really like this song called Damn. Okay, I can't remember who it's by right now.
So we're going to go with that. That's 2.
And then gotta put Cardi B in there.
What song?
Shit. I can't remember the name of it. Get Up 10? Is that what it's called?
I'm not sure her catalog, but we're going to roll with that. And then if you could rename Woodward after one Detroiter, who would it be?
You said, say it again?
If you could rename Woodward after one Detroiter, who would it be?
Malcolm X.
There we go.
Detroit Red.
There we go.
Yep, for sure.
Well, thank you so much.
On my Instagram.
Yeah, I was going to say, that was what I was going to leave you with. If people want to get in contact with you, how should they do it?
You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at that Algerian, that ALGERIAN. You can hit me up on there for more information about the Summer Youth Program. Hope y'all come through. It starts July 2nd, 4 o'clock at Nandi's Knowledge Café.
That's what's up. Peace be.
Yeah, peace out, everybody.
Detroit is Different is where you get information, artistry, history, music, and even comedy. Detroit is Different, a home for the culture of Detroit. Visit online at DetroitisDifferent.com today.